Morning, everybody. Wanted to give you a quick update on our, not necessarily that quick, but an update on our storm, our Tuesday storm, Monday night into Tuesday storm, as I put out my work week forecast yesterday. And yeah, our storm has shifted south. And so the main highlight of this is there's not going to be much of a storm here in southern Vermont. Just south of us, there will be one. Certainly, southern New England is going to get hit hard, which is one of the things about this storm. You may not grab those highlights if you're listening to weather in the Boston area or something like that. Or out of sort of Metro New York or Hartford. All of those areas, if anything, their storm chances have increased as the storm has shifted south. But for us here in southern Vermont, where you don't get a lot of weather a lot of times for us, still looking at not that much. We're looking at a significant downgrade in the storm. The National Weather Service, even they put their updates out basically in the morning and the evening every day, about 12 hours apart. And they still have us with a winter storm watch. And I think that's really just kind of legacy. They didn't quite want to drop it. There were still a couple of models that maybe hinted that we could still get into the snow. As I've started to get the midday models out today, basically all of that has collapsed. It looks like most of us are going to see just about nothing in terms of snow. Very far southeastern Bennington County Rutland County, Windham County. That's the one in the southeast. The Brattleboro area. Yeah, that's where. The Brattleboro area could still see a little snow, although significantly less than I talked about yesterday. So let's take a look at why that happened. We'll give you a little bit of explanation. Oops, you probably want to see me. Maybe you don't want to see me, but let me put myself in front of this picture. So this doesn't look that much different than what we would have expected. Here's our kind of upper level support. Here's our system getting going. There's a ton of moisture with this. We're going to look at that. Somebody's going to get a lot of snow out of it. But the one thing that has changed, and we're going to show you this basically as we go through, is the cool air, this high pressure system to our north, has sunk a little further south than modeled. And that has kind of pushed everything a little further south and east than modeled. And we were on the very northern fringe of where things were going to happen anyway. So, the place the forecast hasn't really changed much is northern Rutland County, because they weren't really expecting any snow, and they're not going to get any snow. But for the rest of us, things shifted 75 miles kind of to 100 miles south. And that's not a huge forecast miss, although it's a pretty bad forecast error modeling-wise out at 36 hours. The model should not be that. We should not wiggle that much. This is sort of like what a normal miss would have been like in the 1990s, but our forecasting models are theoretically better than those. The problem is that 75 miles makes a huge difference in our forecast. Basically, it goes from being a pretty impactful system to nothing, or close to nothing. So yeah, let's take a look at that radar. You can see, oh yeah, we got serious moisture going on here across the southeastern United States. And we talked about how the system is going to be a quick hitter, but how where it does get into the snow, it's going to snow heavy. So if you have to travel to southern New England tomorrow, you don't want to do that. I would just advise completely against that if you can at all avoid it, because there are definitely going to be a period during the morning where a lot of areas in southern New England are seeing 1 to 2 to maybe even 3 inches of snow an hour. And we all want to avoid that kind of travel, especially in places like southern New England where there's a lot of cars on the road. And yeah, you want to avoid that. Here, though, I think we're going to basically be fine. So if you need to travel tomorrow, go for it. Schools, I talked about the chances of school cancellations. I think everybody goes to school tomorrow, even in the places that do see a little bit of snow. I think you're going to school tomorrow, unless something changes again. I mean, essentially all the models have collapsed towards the coast, but you never know, I guess. They all sort of were pretty in agreement yesterday that we were going to get some snow. So we're way too late, really, to be shifting. But you never know, but I would anticipate no. Let's take a look. Here's your upper level. Here's that very strong upper level storm. But it's really this high pressure to our north that's pushing south, or this kind of trough to our north, which has a surface high pressure. This is actually, we'd say actually this is closer to low pressure than high at altitude. But anyway, the high pressure at the surface is pushing south. And we're going to show you on the next map is kind of how the models have proceeded with understanding this. And that's going to explain why the models missed all of this. Basically, this was not forecasted well. This piece was not modeled well. It was modeled to be a little bit further north, which would have allowed the system to come a little bit further north, which would have gotten that heavy snow band into our area. So let's take a look at what happened with that. So here you can see, here you notice how this is just the same time. This is for, sorry, I should have remembered what time this is for. This is for overnight tonight. And you can see that the modeling had started off with the center of that trough and the kind of the upper level low over Hudson Bay, and how that has slowly sunk towards us over the last few model runs. And what that has done is it squeezed the system just a little bit to the southeast. It's subtle, right? Like you could say, oh, the models are pretty close. This is why when you often say, like, the models were wrong, they're not that wrong. Basically, it's still evolving the way that we would expect it to. This is how models normally miss. But the practical weather change is huge over southern Vermont here. So I don't want to bash the models too much. They basically allow us to do what we do forecasting wise. But in this case, a subtle miss, right? You can just see a subtle mismodeling. And part of the problem is how come this happens? Well, there's a lot of reasons it happens. Um, there's a lot of factors in play. This isn't an overly well sampled piece of the atmosphere, right? There are a couple stations that send up balloons here over northern Canada, but balloons give us our best data. We have lots of other ways to get data that we put into the models as well. We use satellite, and there's some very sophisticated ways we can use cloud temperatures and thermal profiles at different IR levels that allow us to get an idea of what temperatures are doing in the atmosphere. But it's the balloons that are the most accurate still. That's been true for the last 60 years. It'll probably be true forever. We get a lot more data out of some of the other ways, but the balloons give us the best data. And so in places where it's not well sampled, we talk about this over the Pacific quite often when storms are coming in on the West Coast, when storms are in an unsampled area, sometimes those satellite measurements, they're just not quite as good, and we mismodel them just a little bit. And that's one of the reasons probably why this happened. It also, again, a lot of things evolving at the same time. Sometimes the models will just not quite model that correctly. The math doesn't, all those equations that they're cranking out don't quite give you the right outcome. This was always sort of in the realm of possibility. We talked about this yesterday a little bit with like the chance of the storm tracks. Remember yesterday, if you watched my video yesterday, I said, probably it's going to come in somewhere between these two. If it came in on the very northern end, we'd be talking about a foot plus of snow probably here. If it came in on the southern end, we'd get almost nothing. Well, unlikely that it would happen, but it was within the realm of possibilities yesterday. It came in on the southern track, and you can see that's a distance, but it's not a crazy distance, 100 miles maybe, 75 miles maybe even. And that 75 miles makes all the difference here, though, because we're going to come in very close to this line, maybe even a little further south of it, kind of outside the expected outcome, and that means no snow for us here in southern Vermont for the most part. Let's take a look at what I've actually got forecast, just to kind of give you an idea. Also to give you an idea of how close an actual storm is to us. And so, these could bump back. Sometimes the models trend in one direction and then bump back a little. So you're not entirely out of the woods in southern or southeastern Windham County. But for most of us, we're looking at nothing. This is closer to an actual dusting to a coating in Windham and Bennington counties. I think you get up to Rutland and Windsor counties, you may not even get any flurries. So that's the northern extent of the snow is going to be pretty good cutoff here. But we could see, I would expect most of Bennington and Windham counties to at least see some snow in the air and a dusting for a lot of areas. 1 to 3 inches I've got just catching the corner. That's not even actually Brattleboro. That's probably just what is the town? Is that Dummerston? I think is in the furthest southeast. I should know that, but now I'm not remembering for sure. So if you're from down here, let me know. Is that Dummerston? I think it's Dummerston. It might be Northfield. I think it's Dummerston. No, it's not Dummerston. Definitely not Dummerston. It might be. I gotta look at the map. Sorry. Anyway, somebody in the comments section tell me why I can't remember my Vermont geography right now. Anyway, yes. So 1 to 3 inches, definitely not that far away from southern Vermont. It would not be impossible for this to sneak back up into us, but I think that's less likely than likely at this point. That's obviously why I've got the map the way that I've got. 3 to 5 inches, I don't think it's very unlikely that this makes its way back into any part of Vermont. And this 5 to 10 jackpot, yeah, not happening for us at this point. So yeah, that's sort of what we're looking at. It's kind of a bummer. There's another chance for a light snow, which will actually end up probably being a bigger snow than this with some accumulations towards the end of the week. So if you're still waiting on that, there's a chance for it. Let's talk a little bit about, whoops, not the 5-day forecast. That's yesterday's. Sorry about that. Monday night into Tuesday's storm. Snow has shifted significantly south. Any snow that falls will begin between 6 and 8 a.m. Timing is a little bit later than we were thinking, mostly just because it's not going to get quite as far. Any snow winds down between 1 and 3. And again, it's going to be very light. Road should be good with the exception maybe of southeastern Windham County. Could be a little bit slick in some of those spots. Just keep an eye on that. School cancellations, probably not going to happen at this point. So there you go. Get out of school a day earlier. I do want to give a quick shout out to my patrons. They help support what I do here at the West River Weather Guy. Thank you for supporting the channel. And if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel before, I would encourage you to do so. Helps make sure you don't miss any of my videos. I will be back. Depends on, I probably will be back sometime on Thursday with a look at Friday's storm, especially if there's going to be some accumulating snow. And then I'll definitely be back on Friday morning. Thanks for supporting.